The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome into episode 1 of season 3 of the Drum Candy podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week's guest is Quentin Q Robinson. Q is currently about to kick off on the first national tour of Ain't Too Proud to Beg, the Broadway musical that's all about the life of the Temptations. And before that, he toured with Avery Sunshine, Anthony David, Peebo Bryson, Bobby Brown. Very versatile, a lot of experience as a musical director, drummer, programmer, and now he's a national touring drummer for a Broadway show. So we talk about that whole process of what it takes to get a show off the road, what kind of gear he has, how he's tuning, maybe differently or not, all that stuff. So let's get right to it. Here is Q Robinson.
Maybe NAMM?
Yeah, it had to have been a NAMM show.
Had to be, yeah.
Yeah. When's the last time you were there? Were you at the COVID show a couple of years ago?
I was. I came in for a day. I was doing a cabaret show at Feinstein's in San Fran. So I came in on like that Sunday and kind of, shook all the hands and kissed all the babies and got back to San Fran for the show at the Nico. So yeah.
Nice. So you left there not sick like everybody else. I feel like a lot of people.
Oh no,
got sick
it was one day. It was one day. One day, and I think if we would have known what we know now, they would have canceled that NAMM show.
I think so. Yeah. Although I think I got exposed to it enough to not get super sick when I finally did catch it.
Yikes.
Yeah.
When did you catch it?
This past August, after double vax, 3 months later, I got it.
Yikes.
Yep.
I got it when no one knew what it was, top of March. Like, all of the stuff, like, now not to lay on your back. And I was just laying on my back, not feeling well, just thinking it was, seasons changing, common cold, tickle in my throat. I literally just had left New York. The last Sunday in February, I was in New York. I made my Broadway debut on a show, and I came back home getting ready to go to another theater thing in Atlanta, and I got this tickle in my throat. I was like, I can't be getting sick. So got a bunch of oranges, ate a bag of oranges, drank a ton of orange juice, and that usually kills it, right? That tickle in my throat 2 days later felt like somebody had hit me in the back of my legs with a baseball bat.
Weird.
And it just got worse and worse and worse. I ended up being admitted to the hospital for about a week and a half. Developed viral pneumonia in both of my lungs, and it was touch and go for a minute. So I was like, holy crap. So yeah. So, it's definitely, it's crazy to be vaccinated and get it. Especially like we had we're out here, we're in Schenectady right now. And one of the local crew members and our crew, like everybody, whether they travel with us or are local, they have to be vaccinated. And someone came back with an inconclusive test, not positive, but just inconclusive. And everything came to a grinding halt. And for the next 5 days, everybody got tested every day, rapid and PCR. And thankfully, no one contracted or had a positive test. So, man, that was a blessing. But like, I can't even think about, doing all of the things that make sense, following the science and still contracting and just like, holy crap, like, what do I do? What do I do now? Right. So, to that point,
me, it was just like a congestion and couldn't taste anything. Got super.
Oh, wow. Did you ever get your taste back?
Yeah, it all came back like a week later. It was like
Oh, okay.
if it wasn't in the middle of a pandemic, I would have thought it was just a really strange head cold, like just a
Mm,
bizarre one that didn't seem
got
to,
it.
it never got down to my chest, thank God.
So let me ask you this question, because this is always like, so when you took the vaccination, did you have any of those symptoms? Like, did you have like a really bad
Nothing.
head thing?
Zero side
Huh?
effects from either shot.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Then
Maybe they
I'm
were just
I'm
putting
also
sugar
wondering.
water in me. I don't know.
Right. I'm wondering too, like, and no one can answer this question for me. It's like, okay, so and I know a couple of people that had it pre-vax and then post-vax, and I'm wondering if the symptoms, can you be symptomatic the first time and asymptomatic, if you recontract? Like, no one can answer that question for me, but like, does your body just respond one way, or does it more? I don't know. Anyway, let's talk about other stuff.
Welcome to the Drum Candy Podcast, where we are cutting edge on science and technology. Oh man, so I want to know, because you said your schedule is crazy. So what do you have in store today? Like where are
Oh
you at in the
man.
process? What's going on?
So this is the last performance. Technically, we're in tech, but
Mm.
at the end of every tech, there is a dress rehearsal. Everybody in full show mode or whatever. So we're fortunate enough to have two of those. So tonight, I go in at 1 today, and it's basically tech rehearsal, tech notes from the invited dress from last night, and we'll do it all again today. So the schedule today will be 1 to 6, dinner break, and come back half hour and do another invited dress at 8.
Mm.
But also in that, working along with production to make sure that all of the drum gear has what it had. Like, there are 3 drum kits on this show, so making sure that those are what they need to be, and then also talking about exit strategy, because being that today is the last show, we got to make sure that all of the drum gear gets packed up, and sent on to the next city, which is Durham. So
Oh, so you're not actually opening there in upstate New York. This is just
mm-mm.
rehearsals. Oh, I
Yep.
didn't know that. I thought you were there for like a
Yeah.
couple of
So
weeks of shows.
right. No. So well, everyone's like, when does the tour start? For me, the tour started back in October, because
Right.
I've been away from home since October. But there was like 5 weeks of cast rehearsal, dance boot camp, and then 4 weeks of cast rehearsals in New York City. And then we had 2 weeks of tech rehearsal. And although shows will be in Durham, you can almost kind of look at those as previews,
Mm-hmm.
right? The show was locked, but in Durham, there could be some different things that happen. The show doesn't officially open until December 15th, and that'll be in DC. So it's kind of like full circle for the show. The show on their pre-Broadway run broke all kind of records at the Kennedy Center. So there were only really 2 places that the show could open, and it really mean that much. It could be where you broke a lot of records, or you could go back home to Detroit, where the Temptations kind of made their bones. So yeah, so Durham is a week, and then we sit down in DC for a month. So we'll be in
Cool.
DC for a month at the Kennedy Center, which is pretty exciting, to be able to play that place. So much history there, and so many great performers and performances have happened there. So to be able to kind of, check that one off the list is kind of cool.
Do they put you up in the city, or you're outside?
No, we're in the city. So typically what they try to do is put us in walking distance to the theater. DC being set up the way it is, a lot of times that's not necessarily possible. So we're just on the other side of the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
It's no direct line to the theater, but it's literally like 5 minutes away. But because you have to go across water, you can't get there. But the company has done. They do a really good job of making sure that things are safe and we have great accommodations, but are also not breaking the bank every city we go to. So they're magicians at that.
So
yeah.
At this point, I mean, you said you have 2 more. I mean, the tech rehearsals, but they're kind of like dry runs. Can things change, like for you?
No, I mean, so with this show, it's a little different. Simply because the show is already up and running on Broadway, right? So this show, Broadway is the mother show, and this is a subsidiary of that. So everything that we do should push people back to the mothership, so to speak, right? So the book is written, my ink is my ink. But it's theater. So everything is, it's a living, breathing organism. Just depending on how the actor takes his line that night, the vamp could change a little bit. But in essence, the show is the show. Every venue will have its variances. And because of that, something may change, but the content and the context of what I'm playing is always going to be the same. From a technical aspect, just based on how wide the stage is, we may sit in the vamp a couple of bars longer, or, we may have to modify some things just based on, where things are set, on the stage. But for the most part, the show is pretty locked. It's not like, it's not like a rock show where, the drummer can, do a fill, for 2 bars one night and a bar and a half the next night, just artistic license. Everything is very what it has to be because there are so many things that depend on that consistency. Time code is running, the lights are listening for a certain thing. If I do a certain feel, that gives the dancers their 3/4 going into the next part. So consistency is key. I think in all music, but particularly this, this is not the time to have your creative, I feel a certain way this night, so I'm going to deliver it this way. No, there's so many other things that we don't even see that depend on that consistency. So, yeah.
Now, did you go and study the Broadway score? Like, are you playing it pretty much note for note as the Broadway show, or how does that develop for you?
Yeah. So prior to this tour, I was one of Clayton's subs. Clayton Craddock is the drummer on Broadway.
Okay.
And I was one of his subs. And prior to that opportunity, I sat in this pit maybe 4 or 5 different times, every time with the book, every time annotating what he changed. As a sub on Broadway, your job is to be invisible as possible, not devoid of personality, but the boxes, the lines are drawn, color within the lines. So for the most part, everything that I'm playing is written. There are certain sections where it just says feel, or, it has slashes. Those are very far and few in between. But in those moments, it's still also staying true to the genre and what we're doing. We are not this is a very modern sound, unlike the Motown sound. If you know anything about Pistol Allen, Papacita Benjamin, and Uriel Jones, they were jazz drummers that could play everything else. So their tone was very jazzy. Like when you listen to those 6-stroke rolls that Benny used to do, it was the tones of the drums were very jazz oriented, very high pitched, very, tonal. and they just used it in a different medium. This is not that. This is a very modern sound, using those tools. So even when it says fills, I'm still doing it under the guise of what those guys would have played. And then, I might put a little sauce on something, just based on what the music, but it all depends, it's whatever's going to push the music forward, what's happening on stage, and, what the music demands. First of all, the book demands that you be true to the genre, but Kenny Seymour and Harold Wheeler, who arranged this music, did a phenomenal job of bridging what they did then, what Broadway does, and then also bringing some elements of a rock show and a pop show into it. So it's a hodgepodge of everything. So, yeah. But to answer your question directly, it's most ink. 98% of it is ink.
So if I'm correct, you play open-handed, left-hand
Mm-hmm.
lead? And what about the Broadway kit? Is it right-handed?
It's a right-handed kit.
So how did you manage subbing on a show when you couldn't play it right?
Man, I didn't realize. I will say this. It's the same instrument, but there are so many different rules that you have to learn. I've been offered maybe sub positions on maybe 4 or 5 different shows, to which I've probably turned down 3 of them for that reason, because the setups are so specific. I went to Clayton maybe a week before, and I was like, hey, man, because he has a very basic setup. It's 2 crashes, like a 17 and a 19-inch crash, ride. Mm-hmm. And it was super simple for me to just take that ride, put it over there, put the crash over there, and be done with it. And he said, I don't know, you can't play the show right-handed? And I thought he was joking. And I was like, no, I play with the ride on the left. I'm an open-handed player. And so he had to get sound guys down there, and the sound designers came in, and they had to approve it. And and so, yeah, I had to play it. So what was weird is that I didn't have a main crash. Because I'm a lefty, my main crash is to the left of my ride. But because they only gave me permission to move the ride cymbal, both of the crashes were on the right side. So
weird.
It was very weird. But being in that chair for the first time with no put-in rehearsal, no nothing, was weird enough. So it's just, you get to a point, like, it's almost kind of like if you're in pain, how much more pain can you really be in if you're in excruciating pain already? So, it was sink or swim. It's like, okay, either I'm going to, thrive in this, take this challenge on and thrive in it, or I'm going to fail and, never be heard from again.
And be a troublemaker. Ask them to move stuff around.
And be a troublemaker, because once that stuff is set, and sound guys are already kind of, the way I describe them is always on the edge of confrontation. So they're like, what are you trying to do? You want to move the ride? You can't play it this way? Sir, I'm a lefty. I'm not trying to move the entire kit. I just want to take this cymbal here and move this one here. And then he was like, okay, yeah, that'll be fine. And then walks out. He was like, thank you.
As long as you have to move their mics, right? That's the only thing they care about. Do not touch a microphone.
Do not touch a microphone. You want to make enemies, move an engineer's microphone.
And so, how did you end up getting the touring gig then?
Okay, so I am based in Atlanta. Well, I'm between Atlanta and New York, but I have a home in Atlanta. I've been there for the past 10 years. And Broadway has been a door that I've been knocking on, I don't know, maybe since maybe 4 or 5 years. And just going up there, sitting in pits and meeting people in networking, playing a bunch of different readings. Clayton called me one day after they won. This was 2019. they got nominated for maybe like 12 Tonys. I think they won a couple. Right after that, they announced that a tour was happening. And I am technically the fifth guy on Clayton's sub list, not because of playing ability, but availability and geography, right? Being in Atlanta, I can be in New York in an hour and a half, right? Like whatever. But because of that, he was like, hey, man, there's this tour happening. I think you would be perfect for it. Do you mind if I throw your hat in the ring? Because on the tour, everybody's from everywhere. Like some of the actors are based in New York, but you have people from the West Coast, you have people from the Midwest, you know, so geography of where you live doesn't necessarily matter as much as much as if you were on Broadway, which, you know, you have to be in the city, you know, you have, you know, it makes sense if you're doing 8 shows a week, 6 days, 8 shows a week, 6 days a week, you know, it makes sense for you to live in New York. But a tour, you know, you're a nomad for a year. You're living out of hotels and Airbnbs. So he put my name in the hat, and I'm glad he didn't tell me this until after I got the gig. But he said that there were 75 drummers vying for that position. Right. I'm so glad he didn't tell me that.
How they whittle that down?
I would have froze up.
How's that get whittled down? I mean, do you have to go through an audition? I mean, how does that work?
So I don't know what their selection process was. What I know is the prerequisite was that whoever the touring drummer was, they wanted to have that person have experience of playing the show. And when he told me that initially, I thought he was telling me that to disqualify me. And he was like, hey, man, just heard back from the producers. You know, they want someone who's played the show. And I was like, oh, man, thank you. I appreciate you putting my name in the hat. Thanks for the consideration. And then he was like, so when can you play the show? I'm sorry, what?
Oh, you hadn't played the show yet?
I had not played the show. This is all off of, you know, and, you know, I've talked to Zach. Zach and I have talked, and I've said this in a couple of other interviews, you know, now Instagram and social media is becoming the preemptive audition. You know, having material that someone can see and someone can view means a lot. And, you know, I got stuff on my website and stuff on my Instagram, not as much as I should, but, you know, whatever. And he saw that, and, you know, he knew I had an interest in playing shows, and I had been up doing some other things. And, you know, as big as Broadway is very small as far as the community is concerned. And, you know, him asking around and, you know, hearing, so me playing the show was the preemptive audition, so to speak. I didn't have the gig until after I played the show. I played the show that Sunday, and I got a call from the contractor like that Monday evening offering me the show. Yeah, so
I thought you were like subbing for a year or something.
I played one show, no rehearsal, hot seat. The music director came into the room, and, you know, being a music director myself, you know, I will go in and be like, hey, man, like measure 3, like look out for this. You know, hey, when we get here, it's a little tricky. I'm going to direct it like this. None of that. He walked in. He was like, you're going to see all the directions coming in real slow. Have a great show. And walks out. And I'm like, I'm sorry. What? Like, wait, what are we doing? And, you know,
I guess you hadn't observed the show at all either? You hadn't been up to sit in the pit yet?
So I sat in the pit.
Okay.
I sat in the pit maybe 4 or 5 times.
Okay.
But me sitting in the pit the first couple of times was only because I wanted to see what it was like. I had no aspiration. As a matter of fact, the first couple of times I had sat in the pit, there wasn't even a tour mentioned yet. Like, so this wasn't about what I know now about the Broadway community is when you request to sit in someone's pit, or when someone offers you the opportunity to sit in the pit, it is because they see you as a viable candidate to sub their show. I had no idea. So one of my favorite shows is How It's Made. I just want to see how things tick and how your world varies from the world that I'm currently in. So for me, it was more of an education of sorts. And now I'm very, when I ask to sit in someone's pit, I'm cognizant of what that actually means now as opposed to before. So I sat in this pit a couple of times just for fun. And then the third and fourth time was because, it was about the business of learning the show and, seeing how he did things and, where everything was. Simply because at that point I was interested in, although cultures are different in different shows, the core of what happens is pretty boilerplate. Getting there on time, doing your prep work, making sure that you understand what each conductor is going to ask for, all of those things. So, yeah.
So let's talk about the gear. You said you have 3 kits?
3 kits.
So I assume you have one main, like in the pit. Do they give you a booth? How's your main
So I have an 8-foot by 8-foot booth. I have a cube. 4 sides. It's 5 sides. Top, 2 sides, front and back. Sound treated, air conditioned. It's my own little piece of heaven. I am using a Pearl Reference Pure, which is my favorite kit in the world, just because of its versatility and the science behind the kit really just makes sense. With that kit, you can get any tone you're looking for, regardless of genre, just period. The reference kit is great. I have one of those too, but I like the thinner shells simply because the tone is a bit more open. So that's the pit kit. 5-piece, 10, 12, 16, 18 by 22 inch kick drum. And then I have my favorite snare, which is a 20-ply reference shell, but mine is modified. So it's a Master's Works. It's a 7 by 14 as opposed to 6.5 by 14. Sabian cymbals. I decided to go with the HHX series. Evolutions. It's an 19 inch Evolution, 18 inch Ozone Evolution Crash, and then an 18 inch H Explosion Crash. There's a lot of crashes because there are a lot of different hits, that sync up with dancers. So having something that sounds a little different, just gives it a little bit more pop and a bit more variety of hitting the same crash on everything. And then my favorite ride in the world right now is the 22 inch Legacy Heavy by Sabian. I love that ride because you can crash it and then get stick definition almost immediately after the crash. But a lot of times when you get a ride that you can crash, the bell definition isn't really good. With this one, it's all of those things. And then I'm using 15 inch Evolution hats, which are just, juicy and buttery and crisp all at the same time.
So are you tuning or muffling any differently with that kit versus what you would use on a non-Broadway gig? So like we were talking about before, although this is a Motown-esque show, talking about the Temptations in that timeline, this is a very modern sound. So I was basically able to tune and dampen the drums the same way I do with Bobby Brown or Peebo Bryson. Fairly open, couple of drum dots on the floor tom, drum dot on the 12 inch tom. The 10 is wide open. I'm using the Remo Vintage Emperors, which already give you a very round sound, very punchy, but also still very tonal. And I'm using a controlled sound coded on the snare. So, very R&B-ish, very pop. But it works. It works fairly well. Funny story.
Because all front of house guys, have their preferences. Oh, you're not using the Yamaha kit. What are you using? And I was like, oh, it's a Pro Reference Pure. Oh, okay, cool. Like, we'll see how it sounds in the house. My my sound check took, no exaggeration, Mike, 5 minutes.
That's what's up.
Hit the kick drum. He was like, oh, that's good. I hit the snare because he was like, what are you using for a snare? Because on Broadway, Clayton is using a Yamaha kit and he's using a brass shell snare. And I brought one on the road just in case there was someone that's saying, well, we want to do exactly what Clayton has in his pit. And I love brass snares, but one of the characteristics of brass snares is they're very pangy, that frequency of pang. And I'm not a fan of that, particularly if I'm playing an R&B gig or something like that. I'm trying to get that out of there. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I'm just going to put this 20-ply, this reference shell up here and see what happens. And he picked it up. He was like, holy crap. And yeah, it's about 20, 25 pounds. And he was like, you carry this thing around? I was like, it's worth the weight. WEIGHT, right? And I hit that thing 3 times. He was like, yep, you were right. That's the snare we're using. Don't even think about, you can leave that other one on the track. So
nice. No dampening? No muffling on it?
I have a big drum dot and a small drum dot.
Okay.
That's it. And that does the job pretty well. Also, it's not tuned super high. It's high enough, but I really wanted to get in that mid range, like, because there are some ballads in the show. So using a deeper snare. I wanted something that can give me the pop on the up tempo tunes, but also give me that low end gush that you want on the ballad. So it's not a lot. The drum dots took just enough of the ring away for it to translate on all of the songs. So
is that booth located in the pit, or are they going to put it wherever the heck they can get it? Where's it going to be?
Pretty much wherever they can get it. But the majority of the time I can see me being like in the trap room, like at the Proctor Theater, which is a beautiful theater here in Schenectady. I'm in the trap room. So, everyone, so they tried to keep all of the noisy stuff out of the pit. So in the pit, you have the conductor who's playing key 1, you have key 2, bass and lead guitar, which are going direct. And you have the 2 violinists who are in the pit. With me in the trap room, you have sax, trombone, and trumpet, and 2 percussionists. So anything pretty much that has mics on it is in the trap room, isolated, so that front of house can, manipulate those volumes as they see fit for the show.
So what are the other 2 kits?
Decade Maple kits, which I'm not gonna lie, being a drum snob, I don't have a lot of entry level kits or entry level to pro kits. I was very so putting these kits together, I was very surprised at the craftsmanship and the detail even at that price point. But it was more about aesthetics. The last maybe 4 or 5 minutes of the show, the band is on stage. And if you know anything about Motown and the Temptations, the Funk Brothers were this big thing. So, you had 2 drummers, a percussionist, guitar, horns, the whole thing. So at the finale of the show, the band is on stage. So one of the percussion players play one of the kits and I play the other. And they wanted a white kit. And the Decade Maple kit, they had a white kit. And it has a very classic look. And it's white, but it's almost kind of like mother of pearl white, so pearlescent even. Like, so depending on the way the light hits it, the way it reflects light, it really looks great on stage. So they're Decade Maple kits, but my stage kit also doubles as my lobby / rehearsal kit, because we travel with a core group, the rhythm section. So 2 keys, bass, guitar, and drums. And we pick up the strings, the horns, and the percussionists in every city. So every time we get to a new city, we have to have a rehearsal. So my stage kit doubles as my rehearsal kit as well. And what works really well are my FRX cymbals. So I'm using the SIDEMAN FRX cymbals on stage, which are amazing because you can hit them and not have to feel and not be afraid of overpowering everything with wash. You know, a lot of these rooms that we're in are, I don't know, 3,000 to 5,000 seats, and they are constructed for symphonies and orchestras. So to have cymbals in there going crazy wouldn't be a great thing, but the FRXs really do the job in there. So yeah, 2 decade cables, all of the pro hardware, Remo heads, you know, SIDEMAN stuff. I'm a creature of habit, Mike.
Are they tuned like the pit kit, or are they more traditional tuning?
To just like the pit kit.
Okay.
Simply because you want a consistency of sound. Because if not, you know, now front of house has to, you know, reinvent the wheel, and we have to now be like, okay, why does this kit sound this way? And the majority of the show, it sounded like something else. So it's very, very similar, as similar as a decade could be to a reference pure kit. But nonetheless, it sounds great. And for those 5 minutes, if you're listening to the tone of the drums, I'm doing something extremely wrong.
Right. Were you, I mean, how did you get those kits on? Like, were you a part of that process? Did you have to bring in kits and show them to the director? I mean, how did that work?
So, the one thing I will say about a Broadway production of this magnitude is that there is no stone unturned. There is someone looking at every aspect of this show. And like I said, because this show has a standard of the Broadway show, we just had to come in and, you know, deal with that. And coincidentally, they are using the Pearl Decade Maple kits on Broadway.
Oh, no kidding.
So it made it very easy. And me being a Pearl artist, that just gave me the opportunity to go in and just house all of the percussion, you know, and make sure that Pearl got all of that love. So even the percussion books, Pearl, Sabian, Pro Mark, and Remo were gracious enough to partly sponsor this tour. So all of the percussion gear is Pearl percussion. That's not the case on Broadway. Javier Diaz, who wrote those books, also Robert Scatero, because they're 2 percussion guys. They're using a hodgepodge of different things. But you can imagine, if you're getting ready for a tour, being able to get all of your stuff from one particular source just cuts down on the logistics of shipping and all of that stuff. So I got a copy of the manifest, the Broadway manifest of what they were using in percussion, and I translated that into Pearl Talk and sent it to my rep, and they took it from there. And so the congas, the bongos, you know, everything that you hear from the percussion book is all Pearl, Sabian, Remo, and Pro Mark. So
nice. So how much spare gear do you take? Are you going to take on the road when this thing goes around?
So my drums are in hard cases, the Humenberg cases. So I have one kit out here. Spare gear. What do I have in my spare? I have the things that would derail me playing. So extra snare stand, hi-hat stand, extra pedal, a couple of extra cymbals. I'm a snare whore, so I have 4 snares out here with me. And then I have a few kick drum patch repairs just in case something stupid happens, but because I'm only playing drums, there are not too many things that can go wrong that can derail me playing. If a snare goes bad, I got 3 others to choose from, extra pedal, hi-hat, snare stand, cymbal, knock on wood, but cymbal stands don't typically go bad.
Mm-hmm.
This is brand new Pearl hardware. So, I think I'm pretty set. I felt confident in being able to bring not as much stuff simply because the drums sounding great is one thing, but the construction and the craftsmanship of the instruments that I'm carrying out here just allow me to breathe easier knowing that I have one drum kit out here, so.
What
and then
heads?
Also,
you're going to change heads every city? What's your process for that?
I let the drums dictate that. I used to be one of those guys, hey, after every 2 weeks, let's change the heads. But my home studio, the vintage Emperors I've had on that kit for the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm afraid to change them simply because every time I get ready, every time I sit down to record, okay, I'm going to change these heads, and I'll sit down to sound check, and they sound great. I was like, why am I going to waste resources in changing heads when they're still giving me what I need?
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably change the snare head every other city simply because I'm whacking that thing pretty hard, and it's a single ply head with a dot on it.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a couple of places in the show where I have to play brushes. So, obviously, over time that coating kind of dissipates or whatever. So just to be able to keep that crisp brush sound, I'll probably change the snare head every couple weeks or every couple cities or whatever. But for the most part, it'll happen when it needs to happen, as opposed to me having a science. And the crazy thing with Remo heads is like the longer you keep them on, the better they sound, which is I don't know how they've been able to do that. There are other companies, as soon as you put them on, they sound amazing. But the minute they get, one dent, it's a steep decline to changing it. But I haven't had that issue with the Remo stuff. So I'll just wait until I need to do it. And it might not be a full head change, although my OCD won't let me just change one head.
So it will be a full head change.
It will be a full head change. And Remo sent a gang of drum heads. So like I'm covered for a while.
What sticks are you using?
So I am using the ProMark. It used to be the Acid Jazz 718, but they just went through a retool of a lot of the stuff over at ProMark, Diodario, and now that stick is now called the Finesse 718.
Okay, I gotta get some.
It's about a 5/8 grip, 16 and a quarter inches long. It has a long taper with a hybrid tip of a ball and a barrel tip. I like that stick simply because, even beyond Broadway, the acts that I play with are very different, whether it be Anthony David and Avery Sunshine versus Peebo Bryson and Bobby Brown. And then I have to turn around and do a jazz gig or, whatever. I didn't want to have to change drumsticks all of the time. So having one stick that encompasses everything, I can go and do, a nice little R&B gig, and at City Winery, and then turn around and play, a stadium gig with Peebo or Bobby, and I don't want to have to think about the less gear I have to think about, the better, so having one stick that does everything is a great thing for me.
Is that made of maple? Does the Finesse mean it's made of maple?
They have maple models, but mine is a hickory.
Okay.
The new ones, the new Finesses that they just came out with, there is a maple component. But for me, the thing with maple is it's a little deceptive, because you remember like the SD2s and the SD9s.
Oh yeah.
They're thick, but when you pick them up, they're light as a feather. And I prefer the hickory. I just like the way the hickory feels the response in my hands when I hit the snare and how it responds to the cymbal. There's a tone that maple gives off versus hickory. And that just might be me being super sensitive to what I'm playing and how I'm playing. But all of that kind of stuff matters to me. You know, I rather it, I call it air drums. Like when I close my eyes, how things feel to me with nothing in front of me is exactly how I want it to feel when I'm actually sitting behind the kit. You know, it's how I want it to sound, how I want it to feel. And that's why I've chosen the companies I have. It's not because of hype, or it's not because they're the it thing or they're the largest. It's literally because when I close my eyes and I play drums, this is what I hear and this is what I feel. Yeah.
Dig it. So last question.
Sure.
I'm such a OCD about my warm-up pre-show routine.
Yeah.
I have something I have to do every time in order to remind myself I can still play the same way I played yesterday.
Right.
Do you have a warm-up routine? I saw you play 3 camps. That's part of my daily routine. Do you have a pre-show ritual?
I do. So I stretch for sure. I just literally just take the sticks, flip them inside out, and I just hold it there for a count of 10. Wrist warm up, count of 10 on each hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Same thing on the right. And I typically go through, you know, the boilerplate rudiment stuff, you know, some paradiddles, making sure the hands are warm enough to get some singles going. I kind of feel like it's kind of like idling a car. When I was growing up, my dad used to make me go outside and warm up my mom's car. So when she got in the car, it wasn't cold, right?
Right.
But what I remember him teaching me, he was like, you don't drive a car when you first turn it on. I was like, what do you mean? So when you first turn on a car, it's revving, it's but then after a while, once it's warm, you'll hear it. It'll have like this, it's calmed down, it's warm, and now the car is ready to perform at its optimal, you know, performance. I kind of feel the same way with my single stroke rolls. So I'll sit down and, you know, I'll start playing. And if you're ever around me when I'm doing it, I'll get to a point I'll be like, there it is, you know, and that's when my hands have calibrated and the single stroke roll. I'm not one of those guys who can just pick up a pair of drumsticks and rip. I have to make sure that I'm ready. And once I feel that, I'll do 3 camps and then I'm ready to go, you know.
Nice.
So, yeah.
I have to add a supplemental question. I forgot to ask.
Sure.
Are you still reading or are you off book at this point?
Good question. I am still reading only because it's important to me to nail everything in this process, right? We're still in tech, and obviously as a drummer, you play something enough, things evolve, you know, players evolve, the book will evolve. And I am playing 100% ink right now simply because I know my job is to make sure that I'm giving those dancers and those choreographers exactly what they need to be able to do their visual job, right? And not to mention, I didn't know any of these people prior to getting to New York. So they're still learning me as a player. They're still learning where my groove sits. Once they get comfortable with that, I'll feel more comfortable with going off of memory. If a gun was to my head, I could probably play this show without the book. But for me, it's also a lesson in, you know, due diligence and understanding that this is my first journey into the Broadway touring world. So for me, because you never know who's out in the audience and you never know, like, so for me, it's the discipline of playing the book. And even after I know the show, I'll probably still turn the pages on the iPad just to make sure. Oh, we're talking about gear. Let me tell you about this real thing. I know we got to go. But what I've done, I've taken a UX80, which is the pearl pipe clamp. It's the long clamp with the clamp on the end. It's a revolving clamp. And I've taken the air turn iPad clamp, and I put that on the end, and I clamped it to one of my tom stands.
Okay.
So the book literally sits right above my toms.
Oh, slick.
Right. So I don't have to have a music stand. Not to mention, a lot of times your music stands are off to the left. If you've ever been playing front and looking to the left the entire time,
yeah,
it's terrible. Right.
Really
not
bad.
To
it
mention
hurts just doing it now.
Right. Not to mention having to look at the conductor, which the conductor camera is typically in front of you, or like I'd rather things be center so I don't have to worry about back issues when I'm 50, right? And then I got a lot of guys don't know, a lot of drummers don't know, but there's this thing called the Air Turn BT200. Okay. And what it is, it's a tap. It's a Bluetooth switcher for drummers. It has two pads where you can hit them and it will turn the pages in your book for you.
Oh, nice. It's not a pedal thing. You just tap it.
It's not a pedal. You can actually hit it. But the cool thing about this is that if you didn't like the feel of those pads, you can disconnect those pads and plug in a PD8 or a PDX100 or a mesh pad of your choice from Roland or whoever, and put it anywhere you want to on a DAWs pad. You can get a DAWs pad and do it and connect that to the transmitter and use those as page turners as well. So I wanted to tell you that simply because I know a lot of guys ask me, like, how are you controlling? Like, are you reaching for your book? And no, it's like, so, and turning pages and you got two drumsticks in your hand, it can get a little tricky. But now it's right under my hi-hat. So when I get ready to turn a page, I just hit it. It's a part of my choreography. So if I'm hitting a crash, I can hit that pad at the same time. It turns the page and I'm ready for the next page. So Check that out. This is by Air Turn. I know I'm not endorsed with them, but I think it's a really cool thing that guys that do what we do, guys that, have a bunch of books that they have to play, particularly if they're digital guys, there's this debate about iPad versus paper, yada, yada, yada. I'm an iPad guy. Especially when you have the big one. I have the Pro, so like it's big enough. It's as big as a piece of paper. It sits there, and I can make all my annotations. It's super neat. I can go back and type it in and make it look like it's a part of the music. So check it out. Manos, Air Turn. Like they have a bunch of different things, but I think you'll like that if you're into digital charts.
Did you get the book digitally? Or did you have to create your own version?
I got a book. I got a digital book. He sent me a PDF and I made all of my annotations, but the copyist for the tour went back and took all of my annotations and made a tour book. So we have a librarian that tours with us, and they're responsible for making sure that all of the music is accounted for and present for the locals. And they made a book for everyone. But I know myself, the bass player and the guitarist are all, using iPads simply because it's easier to travel with an iPad than, And although we're not responsible for traveling our book, I just rather use that just like that is a last resort. Something happens, my iPad cracks and I can't get to the Apple store in time, whatever. I have something, but the iPad works the best for me.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to go get an iPad Pro. And what is it? What is the company that makes the switcher?
Air Turn.
Air Turn.
I'll text you. I'll text you the information if you're really interested. It's really cool. Let's this time to say, man, thank you so much for this opportunity. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of what you and Ben are doing, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and talk to you, man. Makes my day to talk gear. So right I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, everyone listening, go check out the Ain't Too Proud to Beg tour when it comes to your city. Hopefully I'll catch it in DC. That's my hometown. So hopefully I'll see you down there.
No, hang it. I'm there for a month.
Excellent.
Oh, bro, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And I need crab. I need seafood. I need jumbo lump. crab cakes.
Easy to do down there.
Yeah. Yes, Mike, this is happening.
That's it for this week's episode. Hope you enjoyed my chat with Q. If you did, please head over to iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Drop us a 5-star rating and a nice review. That helps spread the word. Also, if you're not checking out the episodes in video form, they are all being posted on our YouTube channel. Just go to Drum Factory Direct's YouTube channel. Every episode gets posted there in its entirety. And also, if you're not following us on social media, make sure you follow us at least on Instagram, but also Facebook. I'm going back now and touching base with some of our previous guests to do some quick Instagram live interviews, so you don't want to miss out on those. And anyway, that's it for this week. Have a great week, and we will see you next time.